Welcome back to the PB&J podcast. I am your host, John Arvin. If you're wondering where the other host is, Parker, well, I've already kicked him off the show. He's fired. He's gone. You will not see him here ever again. I think one episode might be the world record for shortest podcast host ever. In all seriousness, today is just a little bit of a different kind of show. We're going to have a conversation with two of my other favorite people on this planet, Corey Sawyers and Jack Dodgen. Corey Sawyers ministers and preaches in Martin, Tennessee. And you'll know who he is right away because of his accent. So just listen for it. Then Jack Dodgen, he preaches and ministers in Midwest City, Oklahoma. In my first full year preaching full-time, these were the two men I called more than anyone else when I needed ministry advice, help with sermons I was struggling with, some Bible questions I wanted someone else's opinion on as I was thinking through it. These were the two men that I called, and they were a blessing to me every single time. I never got off the phone and regretted calling these guys. We laugh, we learn, and it's such a blessing to me that I thought maybe it'd be cool if we got on a call and had a conversation about the things we learned this past year. That's the question I'm asking them. What did you learn in 2024 from preaching? It may be something scripturally. It may be something practically about ministry. But we're going to have that conversation, the three of us, and I hope it's a blessing to you, as I know it's going to be a blessing to me, and I think to the other guys as well. So enjoy. All right. Well, here it is. It's time for the conversation on the PB&J podcast. And two of my favorite people on the planet have joined. Jack, would you say hello?
Hello.
See,
Thanks for having me.
And then Corey, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
See, I told him in the intro that Corey's accent would give it away who he is quicker than Jack's, and it works already. So.
Accent? What accent?
Maybe I have one.
Me and Peter, our accents give us away every time. So
every
company.
Time.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, please do not lecture us about supper and dinner and lunch and how lunch is not a biblical term today. I've gotten enough of that over the years.
It should go without saying at this point, then.
Yeah. No, I appreciate both of you being on. You two know how much I appreciate you guys, and I've already said it a little bit, but you two are the men I call the most in ministry. You have been invaluable to me, whether it was in school with Corey or just any time really in ministry with Jack. So I'm very happy to have you two as friends and brothers and partners in this work. So super thankful for both of you. Looking forward to talking with you. And the question was, what have you learned in 2024 in ministry? And I figured I would just start us off since I invited you. I'll let you listen to me first for a little bit. But since I started, I've been in full-time ministry for 7-8 years, but this was the first full year of being the preacher. And what I learned is really just all about the reality of preaching. And it's hard. It's a lot harder than I realized. Not that I thought it would be easy, but it's like when you know a stove is hot and you shouldn't touch it, but you know it's something you once you actually touch it, it's a different kind of knowledge you have about it. That's what I have learned about preaching, just the very experiential, practical knowledge of it. If it's difficult. Sunday does come every 7 days or every Sunday, as the preachers told me. I get that on a different level now. Just speaking 2 to 4 times a week. I don't know how many times you guys speak on a regular basis. What would your average be? About that?
Average is 3 there.
Yeah. And then you have anything else in ministry of Bible studies and visitation, stuff like this. But the amount of study and discipline and time it takes, plus how often it's on your brain, even when it's not supposed to be, or you're trying to take a break. I just realized how difficult it is. When guys introduce themselves to me and they say, I've been in ministry for 20 years or 30 years, I kind of want to hug them and tell them, like, you're amazing. Tell me how you're doing it. How long have you guys been in ministry, by the way?
This is year 11 or 12 for me. I think I'm starting year 12. Yeah.
Nice. Corey?
My first real preaching job, I was bivocational for a long time, was when I was 22, and I'm 50 now. So I've done nothing but ministry since I was 37. So that's been 13 years for that. But yeah, I don't know that I used to say I was a part-time preacher. I don't know if there is such thing as a part-time preacher, but I don't know. It's a complicated way to look at how long I've been in it.
But you've had skin in the game. You've had skin in the game for a while. I am the rookie in this trio conversation. I am the rookie. But I think just the demands of preaching, I knew they were something, and I was excited to be the preacher and to get to preach more. I knew it was going to grow me, but man, it's just a lot more than I realized. And I don't say that to like pity party or that I'm angry at that or anything. It's just a lot. That's the reality of it. I've learned it's worth it. It's a beautiful blessing. It grows me personally. I learn a lot more as I study and teach than I do when I am being fed by other people more. God finds ways to refresh me, and in those moments where it is difficult or you struggle with motivation, you have to kind of remember why you're doing it. But this year has been just it's more difficult than I realized. I know. Do you guys know who Kevin Hahn is? Mm-hmm. Ever heard of Kevin?
Yeah.
I taught a class with him at a church camp when I was in Texas, and I remember we were talking afterwards once, and he said, we were talking about ministry. He said, if you think one more person will be in heaven, would you be a minister? And those are the kind of things I think I have to remember at times when I'm tired or just if I'm helping one person, is it worth it? It's absolutely. So it's a blessing. But for me, I've learned it's more difficult than maybe I thought. And I've learned there's a lot of insecurity in preachers and in preaching, at least for me. I don't know if you feel the same way. Do you guys feel that way? You ever feel a little insecure in ministry?
Yeah. Yeah. It feels like it's one or the other, like end of that spectrum. The super prideful guy or the I shouldn't be doing this at all guy. I have no idea what I'm doing. And you're never in between those.
Yeah. I feel like I'm a little more this year on the insecure guy than the prideful guy. I don't want to say I hope I get there.
Yeah, no.
But part of the problem with preaching is you're imperfect preaching a perfect gospel. So you always feel like a hypocrite, and you're telling people this is what you need to do, knowing all the while I never really measure up to that.
Yeah. I wrote down so many questions I think I have on a routine basis every week or month in preaching. Am I understanding this right? That's probably the one question I have asked you guys more than anything this year. Like, hey, this is what I'm getting from this text. Is that true? Is this what they need to hear? Did that lesson come off how I intended it to? Or did I say that the right way? Why do I feel like I have more questions than answers? We kind of think we have all the answers, or we're supposed to have all the answers, and I have far more questions sometimes than answers. What you were saying, Corey, all the weaknesses as a messenger in the perfect message you're spreading. It sounds like you guys would say you completely relate to that. Do you think every preacher struggles with that?
I think most. Yeah, I think most would.
Yeah.
Then you have the guys on the other side. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Why do you say the one's worth their salt?
Well, I think if you don't have a little bit of that sense, you don't really understand God or the message that we're carrying either, or yourself to some extent.
Had an older, I want to say it was Mac Lyon at In Search of the Lord's Way, doing this from like age 12, and he was 90 something when I talked with him. Like, if you don't still get nervous at my age when you're doing this stuff, something's wrong. And it's that idea of don't forget what you're dealing with when you get up there. Yeah.
It's a weighty responsibility. And sometimes I am overwhelmed by why me? Like, why has God, you could have picked anybody and you've asked guys like me to do this. It kind of blows my mind. Let me ask you this as a young minister who deals with it, what do you remind yourself or what do you take comfort in to help you with some of those thoughts and questions that you have in ministry as you deal with it?
Well, mostly just that I don't really matter as much as I think I do sometimes. That's a really comforting thought to, the number of times, and you see, reels and gifs and all kinds of things about this, but like the number of times that I think this is a home run sermon, and I get in the car, no one says anything. I get in the car, Melody, how was that? She's like, wasn't your best, And then the number of times that I think this was horrible. I've had 3 funerals and the flu this week, and I'm just not prepared. And there's 4 responses, and 12 people text message me after services about how it changed their life. Mm-hmm. And it's just a reminder that it's really not about me. It's about the message. That's where the power's at.
Yeah. Jack, you?
Yeah. The thought of like this message needs to get out. And there is the ultimately, I don't matter as much as I might think sometimes that I do, or God can use me when I think very low of myself to get this message across. But ultimately, at the end of the day, this message has to go out, and I want to do it, and I can. Here am I, and that's sometimes that's enough. Of look, just get it out there, and it'll do its thing.
Yeah, I was trying to think of some verses I think that have meant a lot to me this year. I think since this conversation and the questions we have, it kind of reminds me of what Paul says in 2 Corinthians 2 when he says, "Who is sufficient for these things?" Like if you do feel good enough or qualified in every area to speak, that's probably a red flag, not a green flag.
Yeah.
I think all healthy, good ministers should have that natural sense of humility. And I just think about what he said in 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and 2, just about how when he preached, he says, consider your calling. Not many of you were wise according to worldly standards, or powerful, or noble birth. God shows what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. He'd go on to say in chapter 2, when I came to you, brothers, I didn't come proclaim to you the testimony of God with lofty speech or wisdom. I decided to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified. And I was with you in weakness and in fear and in much trembling. And my speech and my message were not in plausible words of wisdom, but in demonstration of the Spirit and of power, so that your faith might not rest in the wisdom of men, but in the power of God. I'm trying to remind myself of who I'm pointing them to. And it's someone far greater than me. And it's a message far greater than my own. But that's been my kind of takeaway from the year is I've just gotten a dose of reality about preaching and insecurity, and I'm trying to remember who it's about and why I'm doing it, and who's really the one making all things work for good and working through it. So that's really my takeaway. What was yours from this year? I don't know who wants to go second, but someone take it.
Go ahead, Jack.
I'll jump in.
That's Southern hospitality. He asked you to go before him.
Yeah, I also I'm like, okay, youngest guy, middlest guy, oldest guy, and
we're gentlemen. We're gentlemen here in Oklahoma.
Yeah. The biggest thing for me was learning to be patient with people, not in the sense of like they're upset and I need to be patient with, not that, but preaching these messages and when I'm asked like what ultimately is the job of the preacher, my answer is to change the culture, because that's what the word does. It changes people, it changes a group of people, and this group becomes something different than what's around them. And so it's hard in preaching and saying, hey, here's what God's expectations are, and here's how to do these things, and even sometimes being very practical in that, and then ending the lesson week after week and going, I'm just not, are people growing? I'm not seeing it. But then there were a lot of things at the end of this past year, at the beginning of this year, where I've gone, well, it looks like there's been a lot of growth in some of these people's lives, and it wasn't until now that I've seen it. But this didn't just show up overnight. It's been happening. And so to know that, get the word out there, know that the word is doing something, and just keep going, and you'll see the growth. That's been a big thing for me.
It is kind of difficult with what we do in our service of we don't see people, their Monday, what their Thursday looks like Tuesday. Most often we don't know all the ways they take a message and apply it and study it and grow in it. It is kind of difficult to gauge how we're doing. Often there's no, like, what's your quota? What is your standard of success that you've met in ministry? It can be, I relate to that. I resonate with that.
Yeah. And it's there's huge temptation to be discouraged by just week over week, and then as you keep preaching these things in your months down the line, you go, okay, it's been half a year, and how many responses and how many baptisms? Is that how I want to measure this? Do I want to measure it a different way? Are people stepping up? Just before you know it, it can be very tempting to get discouraged with. I preached for half a year, a bunch of series that I thought were, really good lessons, and maybe they weren't really good lessons. Maybe none of them connected with anybody, and nobody was in those places where I thought they might be, and they're still not there. And you can go down that doom spiral path, or okay, it's doing something, or my job is just to get it out there, and what they do with it's what they're going to do with it. So yeah.
Corey, do you feel that in your ministry too?
Yeah, and as you said, the gauging success or failure is really, because even like if we are having a lot of baptisms and a lot of responses, well, I know we're kind of like the quarterbacks. We get way too much credit when things are going well and way too much blame when it's not. I mean, it's just the reality. And, even if we're having a bunch of baptisms, I know deep down, a lot of those are because, it was a friend that someone studied with, and then they came to me. We had a girl last year that came, just showed up, started worshiping with us, and then she wanted to study with me. Well, first study, she had taught herself the truth. She just needed somebody to confirm it. I really did nothing but here's the baptistry, kind of deal. So, it's hard to gauge if we're thinking in terms like that. Are we successful or are we not? And it's, again, about thinking about what really ministry is all about.
I think it's also hard when we look online and we see our other ministry friends, or just ministry in general in churches, and you see what they're doing or the good things that happen. And then we start trying to compare. I don't know if we try to compare, but it's natural in our heads to say,
right.
Yeah. Oh, they got it together and we don't. Corey they had 30 more baptisms than we did. Clearly something's wrong. Or we're not doing our job, or things like that. Then it's hard because you start getting into that weird way you gauge success all over again. These are fun because I feel like all of these that we're picking so far relate to each other. At least I feel it in my ministry too. Yep. Corey, what is yours? Let's see if we can make it 3 for 3.
Well, my 2024, I think what I learned most was just how to get through opposition to ministry. I don't know that I'd ever really felt that, but, you mentioned 2 Corinthians a while ago, and that really helped me through 2024 a whole lot. 2 Corinthians did. I studied 2 Corinthians a lot in 2024 because nothing like what Paul faced, or, a lot of other people in the world. But when you have someone that's trying to undermine your ministry, whether it's a group of people or it's an individual or whatever, because of all of these insecurities that we already feel, and because of the fact that we don't know how to gauge success, sometimes it feels like no matter what we do, it's going to be the wrong thing. And I don't know that I'd ever really had to go through something like, that. And it was challenging. And, I found out a need for, I was thinking about, you'd asked me to think about what we wanted to talk about. And so I was trying to think about PRST is what I came up with, about the need for prayer and how differently my prayer life was during that time. The need for role models. There were a lot of guys that I looked to, that I went to for advice, and probably some guys that I was ashamed that I should have sooner. Because we do feel like we have to know the right answers all the time ourselves. Having students, I probably learn more from you these days, John, than you do from me. But one of the things that really helps me is when someone like you will call and say, "What do you think about this?" Because it distracts me, at least. Having kind of that Paul person in your life that you're looking up to, but also having a Timothy in your life that you can pour yourself into. And then the text, like I said, 2 Corinthians, I was hammering 2 Corinthians, studying it as deeply as I could. And I'd studied it before, but I studied it way differently in 2024 than I ever had before. But ultimately, of all those blessings that God has given me, he brought me through it. And sometimes that's hard to see, the end of that tunnel, but it just gave me a different perspective on, having the fortitude to, man up and say, I'm going to keep pressing forward no matter, what's thrown at me. So,
yeah, we do not lose heart. Yeah. I said, let's make it 3 for 3. I don't know if I faced that in ministry. I don't know, Jack, maybe you have to a degree at some point. But it's going to happen. I think that
I'll
go
jump
ahead.
in. There's not always as direct. Like there have been some direct moments throughout all that, but then there's, talking about opposition, there's been some of the some indirect stuff of people leaving for different reasons and all of this, but you ask those same questions of, am I bad at this? Is this me? So it's that insecurity we talked about before, but then also, is it really actually because of me or a thing that we implemented? Or is it, is this, are my ideas bad? Are these, that, so there's a little bit of the direct stuff, and the direct is hard. I think it's probably the hardest of the two, but at least like, yeah, they don't like me. So we got to deal with it. Then there's the indirect of, well, they might not like me, but I don't know, and they won't tell me. And I think,
and I don't know what's worse.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, that might be worse than the direct. It's like, at least I know where you stand. I don't know if I could say I've had the direct opposition. There is this weird feeling when you start somewhere and you replace somebody, of not that people are already in opposition to you, but you have to feel like you have to win them over.
Yeah.
Like they're on another team, which shouldn't feel that way. And people here have been amazing to me. And so I don't hope people take that the wrong way, but maybe there's a little bit of indirect there. But how does that change? How has that changed your? I know you said PRST, which is great, a little acronym.
Sermon outline. That's why we put Corey last. So
that's why we call Corey.
Yeah,
so we have. How has that changed? Has that changed anything in your approach to ministry?
Well, yes. Part of what I said a while ago about realizing how unimportant I am, I'm going through all of this and thinking that it's just all, and I don't know how. Again, like Jack was saying, I don't know how to measure success, but we had a really good 2024. We grew in a lot of ways. We had baptisms, we had responses, we had, all of the parameters we might normally, whether right or wrong, that we would gauge. There's overall ministries, and I having said all that, I feel like I'm talented enough I could do about whatever I wanted to do in life to a certain extent, but I want to do ministry. And I'm not complaining at all, but just the realization of it's not about how liked I am or how proficient I am. It's just as much about just having the stick to it. And I don't know if that's really a word or not, but
we allow it.
Yeah. So just keep pressing forward and trusting in God and realizing that, there are a number of people. I'll say it right now. John came and visited us last summer, and you made our family calendar this year. One of my favorite pictures is us standing out in our parking lot and John praying with me and for me. And my wife is our secretary here. I'm one of the few preachers that can flirt with the secretary and get away with it. So, but Melody saw it and she took a picture out the window of us praying together. And that's the kind of thing that means so much to you. But to realize my worth is not based in what others think of me, but, what does God think of me and how he surrounds me with people that I need and blessings that I didn't even know I needed.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that. I think all of us would say this and echo it from the rooftops and shout it as loud as we could, that preaching and ministry is a blessing. It's a beautiful thing, and it's blessed and changed our lives tremendously. The people we've met, the places we've been able to go, the things we've been able to do, the very intimate and special moments that we've been able to witness in the lives of people. But there are some challenges with it, and we deal with some things and feelings that come with ministry. And it's cool that we get to share in those in some ways with our Lord, who went through the same thing as he ministered. I'll tell you this, I don't really know how to wrap this up into a perfect bow, but we can try. But as we've talked about this difficult work that we're in, but it's a blessing, and how we have to be patient with people and how insecure we can be and all these things. I appreciate the both of you very much. Your ministries have impacted my life in a great way, and it still is. And I know you said you need a Paul and a Timothy. I'm glad I can be your Timothys. Jack, we're very close in age, but I'll be your Timothy too. But I appreciate you both very much. Please keep preaching, keep ministering. You're making a difference in my life and the life of many others. And I love you both. I would ask you one question as we close, since this is the PB&J podcast. How do you make your PB&J? What's on it?
Well, we'll have Corey, and maybe he's got a sermon outline for this too. I don't know, but so I did listen to episode 1, at least the first half of it so far. Okay. So I'm a crunchy peanut butter guy the whole way. I like the texture difference it brings. I don't know if that's refined palate. Maybe I don't know what Parker's on about it. Don't even try. You should try it. Okay, give it a chance. But crunchy peanut butter, and then grape jelly is fine, but strawberry jelly, if you can get that, it's great. Just a good combo. As long as it's you want cold jelly. I'm on that too. Cold jelly, strawberry if you can, crunchy peanut butter. That's how I do it.
There you go. Corey, what about you?
Well, to me, the best peanut butter is actually, have you seen the Goober grape, where it's the peanut butter and jelly already mixed in the jar?
I haven't, I don't think. First of all, that's a great name. Goober grape?
Goober grape.
Yeah.
It's got the peanut butter and jelly already mixed in the jar. And for some reason, I know it's just peanut butter and grape jelly, it's better when it's mixed together than it is separately. But the best thing you can do with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich is, and I also like Jack's idea, doing strawberry. I also get, there's some raspberry jalapeno jelly that I get from an Amish store here. And that, with a little bit of heat, that makes it good. But if you'll butter the outside of your bread and toast it like a grilled cheese, phenomenal.
Ooh, okay.
That, so I like that right there just reinforced to me how much of a bachelor I am. Like, just how detailed your PB&J was. That sounds. I'll have to try that. Listen, that's great.
You don't get as fat as I am without knowing you're in the kitchen.
I love it.
This is the most mentored I've ever felt, by the way. That moment right there.
Everything we've talked about has been. Everything's been comforting and encouraging, but that right there, the best, the highlight of the pod. So I love it. Okay, well, maybe next time we'll come with our PB&Js in hand if we do this again and have another conversation. So I appreciate you both very much. I love you guys.
Love you.
Have a great 2025, and I look forward to seeing all the good things that you guys do and that God does through you. So I appreciate you very much. And if you're watching this, we appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you next time.